This is a fun video to start with. From Jared McGuire.
I am here for you. You don't know what it's like to be me out here for you. It is an up at dawn, pride-swallowing siege that I will never fully tell you about, okay? Help me. Help me, God. Help me. Help me. Help me. Help me. Help you. You are hanging on by a very thin thread. And I think that about you.
All right. Isn't that the best? Help me help you. Why is it so hard? I mean, basically, we want to help. We want to make a difference, right? But honestly, I think that cartoon captures the essence of what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with a system that is, whoa, wait a second, we're talking about teacher leadership? We're talking about distributing that leadership across the different grades and departments. That's a little bit uncomfortable for us. So sometimes we're perceived as the angel of death rather than an agent of change. So what's the problem with the idea of change? Three things I want to really talk about. One is, why is it so darn hard to change? What are the different models of the change process, and how do you become a change agent? Really, I don't think that's relevant here, because I think you all are change agents. That's why you're here. Knowing the people in this room, it's evident that we'll talk about the first two questions. I don't know if you can say this, but take your pills and focus. He says, on what? Right? Okay, so we've got some issues in some settings, right? And we know where those settings are. And we also know Peter Drucker has a great statement. Everybody has accepted by now that change is unavoidable, right? But it's like death and taxes. It should be postponed as long as possible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We just don't like change. And I think partly it's due to just the way we're wired. When you look at the definition for stress, stress is defined as the fear of the unknown. And when you bring about change, you are bringing about entrance into the unknown for many people. And so it's fearful. It's anxiety producing. It gets our cortisol levels up as we deal with this changing environment. I saw some of the features of leadership: action, meaning, collaboration, and structure. Suddenly the structure is gone. You are walking away from the lattice work that you're familiar with into the forest. And that means picking up some instruments you may not be familiar with. And that is scary for some. I'm going to skip the poem. So here's a little thing from Karen Salmonson. Most of you who know me know after 1 year, I'm not so pleased if something hasn't changed. But 10 years doing the same thing, right? Okay, so change is good when it's for the right reasons. And what the kind of change that we're talking about in teacher leadership is for the right reason. The idea of a Superman, Superwoman leading a building solo is ludicrous. And we know that through distributive means, when that leadership is shared, the effectiveness of that school principal is greater, as is the effectiveness of the school teachers. No question. So why are we doing more of it? It has to do with the fact that it's not always thought out well. The model isn't always followed well. So we'll talk about some of that. I love this one. Crazy people don't know they are crazy. I know I am crazy, therefore I am not crazy. Isn't that crazy? Brain plasticity. How many people are familiar with the idea of brain plasticity? Right, so basically, Susan Cavalli said that our intelligence is a measure of our experiences. And so that the world of your world and the experiences of your world and those of your children shaped your brain and those of your children. And we know how disparate those children's brains are when we work with them. Some are reading at grade 9 as a 5th grader. Others are still grappling with letters of the alphabet. Some have been in the Museum of Natural History. Others haven't gotten beyond the confines of their local park, community park. So here's the catch-22 of brain plasticity when it comes to change. If you look at the brain as being malleable and responding to the environment, it is shaped by the environment. So as you do something, you become more familiar with it. The best way to demonstrate this. How many people like to downhill ski? Oh yeah, 2 hands up. All right. So here's a mountain. All right? Okay. That's good. So when you go, it's a fresh snow. The best, right? You go down that mountain and you kind of you're going over that terrain and you're carving into that mountain. You're the only one on the mountain. You go down and you set that course. The brain, the mountain, the snow is yielding to that trip you take. You go back up the mountain. What course are you most likely going to take? Same one, right? Makes sense. So you kind of do this over and over. So your plastic brain is yielding each time to that trip you're taking down. After a while, you're in a rut. You've gone down that mountain so many times, you've gone down that road so often that you can't see out of it anymore. And that's the challenges we're dealing with in a system that's done things the same way for so long, and then someone new comes out and says, wait a second, why are we going this route? It's not easy. But what Nancy shared and what you're going to learn throughout the day are strategies, techniques, perspectives that can help you change the mountain, change the way we do things. Okay. So I'm going to share with you 4 models. These are models that I learned over my career, and also when at Sage, Dr. Jerry Steele in the back smiles at Sage Graduate School, their doctorate of education leadership has some really nice material. So let me share with you 4 models, and you can decide which of these models best work for you. All right? Michael Fullen, I love Michael Fullen. How many people have seen Michael Fullen? He's the best. I saw him in Canada. He's just this authentic person. You know, he cares about kids, he cares about teachers, he cares about principals and school district leaders. He's a cool guy. You can't mandate what matters. Just because it matters to you doesn't mean it matters to everyone else. If you're married, you know exactly what I'm saying. Or if you're a parent with teenagers, you know even better what I'm saying. So you can't mandate it. There was a thing on NPR this morning, I don't know if you listened to it, but it was talking about revolutions. And it talked about revolutions that are successful and ones that fail. And so they did research. These 2 researchers studied, is a nonviolent revolution more likely to succeed than a violent one? And they found unequivocally that nonviolent revolutions are the ones that last, because everyone buys into it. The mandate isn't from above, it's from throughout the group. You can't mandate what matters. And it's a journey, and it's a messy journey. Change is very messy, right? So in that journey, you've got to be prepared for problems. You know, I love what Ken Slentz used to say over and over again, don't let perfect get in the way of good. Now, regardless of what we feel about Race to the Top and all the other stuff that goes with it, that's a good model. It's not going to be perfect. It's a journey, and learning from the journey is what's critically important. A third one is problems are our friends. They're opportunities. They're opportunities to do better next time. So when you run into a problem, you can look at it as, oh my God, this is horrible, or oh my God, this is a chance to make things better. The vision, the strategic planning, they come later. If you go too early into this path, you're basically setting the track and people will not be able to find the best track down the mountain. So you've got to be open to ideas and let the strategic planning come through time. You need to do things both at the individual level and at the collective level. And things have to be done both top down and bottom up. All right, it's a community effort. Partnerships, working in with external groups really matters. We've done a lot of good work in our change, in our teacher leader projects as a higher ed partner. And those kind of arrangements work best because you've got this synergy. You've got this cocktail effect going on, you know, where you multiply many times over the numbers that are working with you. And the other thing is every person is a potential change agent, right? You don't have to be an expert to help make the change happen. So that's a really quick snapshot of Michael Fillin's 8 lessons, if you will, about change. This one is a little different. This is from the NASSP, National Association of Secondary School Principals. About 15 years ago, I went to DC with Tom McGowan and Jeff Ziegler. We went down for a Breaking Ranks training. It was great. Breaking Ranks, it was driven initially by secondary school principals and then made into the middle level. But these are what they identified as the 5 key steps to manage complex change. I don't even know if manage is the right term, but these are things in this model that you need to be aware of when you're looking to create change. You need to know where you're going ultimately. You need to know what that vision is. There needs to be skills present. I saw earlier again, one of Nancy's slides, this whole idea of having mastery. You know, if you don't have the skills, you get anxious. If you don't have that sense of efficacy, you're more likely to stand back and let someone else do it. And then you may start to get upset about the way it's going. So it's really important that there be skills. It's always good to have incentive. There needs to be some form of incentive, some motivation. We're certainly driven intrinsically to do this work, right? But their extrinsic factors help as well. You know, that always helps. You need resources, and you need a plan ultimately. So let's take a look at what happens when these different things are missing. What do you think is going to happen if just with your neighbor? Think fair share. What would happen if you didn't have a vision? Just discuss with your neighbor what's more likely than not to happen. Well, you get confusion. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why? Oftentimes it's a failure of communication, right? Cool hand loon, seems to me we have a failure to communicate here, right? So you get confusion. Okay, with your neighbor again, what do you think happens if you lack the skills? Go ahead, with your neighbor, skills are lacking. You get anxiety. You get fearful. You get stressed out. Suddenly, the 8-hour day feels like a 14-hour day because you're exhausted. Because you're anxious. You're going in anxious. You're leaving anxious. You don't know what's going on. You don't have the skills to do the right work. And so you worry a lot. But once again, what do you think happens when you lack the incentive? I'm not doing that. Been there, done that. This too shall pass. Don't worry about it, kid. Just give it a few years and don't forget all about it. You'll have a new principal in the building. Don't worry about it. Just hang tight. You don't do it. If you lack the resources, you've got everything else. You have the vision, you have the skills, you have the incentive. You're going to get frustrated. You know we need to do. I can do this work. Darn it, give me what I need. And in that case, the person said, okay, here's your curriculum writing project for the summer. Do it. There it is. I have the resources now. I can get it done. And if you don't have an action plan, well, you're just going to be going around in a treadmill. I like this model. It's kind of fun, and it's true. There's a lot of truth in every one of these different pieces to managing complex change. So this comes out of NASSP, National Association for Secondary School Principals, Breaking Ranks. The third one is a very simple list. Cotter and Cohen. John Cotter, he has the 8 steps. He works a lot with business. He has some really good videos on this model. But basically, these are the 8 sequential steps that need to be in place. First of all, there has to be a sense of urgency. You'll see in my bio, I do a lot with climate change. And I feel there's a sense of urgency on that topic. So when I go out and address audiences, or I blog about it, or I march, I'm doing it to bring awareness of the urgency of the matter. In your roles as teacher leaders, or as potential teacher leaders, or as school building principals, you need to help people understand the sense of urgency that exists. Look at the data. You'll find it. Then you got to find the right players, because you know who the right players are. But you know, as I say that, I'm also thinking you have to hear from the people who disagree as well. So you've got to walk a very fine line to build your team so that you get to see and hear both sides of the equation, if you will. But also pick those, I don't want to say the word naysayers, but those that are a little more rigid, who are at least open-minded or good at what they do, because they're going to help you a lot. Oops, sorry, you need to get the vision right. And that's, the process of vision setting is quite complex. It involves multiple stakeholders. It involves use of a lot of data. And it's a discovery process that leads to this statement of where we want to be. Communication matters in all cases, right? Communicating with everyone, open, transparent communication. You know the best people you've worked with and for. You could talk with them. They kept people aware of what was happening. There were no surprises on the first day of school. There was good communication. Today, with the digital technologies that we have, there's no reason everyone shouldn't be in the loop. Empowering action. Again, that's a trust thing where you basically empower others to take action. You give them what they need to be an active cog in that mechanism that's changing the system. I used to work a lot for Bill Daggett, International Center for Leadership and Education, when I taught in the summers and during breaks, and I used to do the science pieces. That's what I taught. But I remember Bill, he had relationships with schools all around the country, and he said, look, when you go to the school district and you do your piece on science, or Ben Lindemann, you're going to do math, or whomever else is working, he said, find some real quick successes. Because these people are beaten down. Their results are bad. They're working with a very difficult socioeconomic group. They need to smell some victory. So we always went in and we immediately looked for some short-term wins. When you are bringing about change, there needs to be some victories. Really quick, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. Find them, celebrate them. And the other one is you can't stop. You gotta be like that bulldog, right? The bulldozer. You gotta be bulldozer. I mean, you can't stop. It's so easy to just say, I don't care. You know, let someone else go. I'm tired. You know, I'm done. I'm done. You got to keep it going. Keep on keeping on. There's no stopping. It's almost obsessive, and actually some of my friends in this room are kind of like that. I know. I so much appreciate that. They don't let up. You know, I have special folders on my email email list just for them, because I get a lot of stuff. And, oh my God, I can't keep track of it all. They don't let up. And then make it stick, because after the success of victory, you forget. And you forget the things that got you to that successful point. So you've got to put calendars together, reminders, tickler files, things in place that make sure that the change sticks, that it's there 5 years later, even if you're not there. All right, so that's Cotter and Cohen. So we've taken a look at Fullen. We've looked at the NASSP model. We've looked at Cotter and Cohen. There's one more, Otto Scharmer. Ooh, anyone ever heard of Otto Scharmer? Well, he's from MIT, so that should give you an idea of how complicated this model can be, right?
That's right.
I don't know how many times I read it and still didn't understand it, but I did glean a few important pieces. He wrote a book called Theory U. And basically, we work from blind spots. We don't even see and realize what we are doing. So we're in that trench, on that mountain, and we're doing things we're unaware of. So he says we have to think differently about how we respond to change, how we react, how we can redesign, reframe, and ultimately presence, where you're actually in this very flow-like state where you're living a change in a very positive way. Cotter, in those four pieces to change, or responding to change, most people get to stages 1 and 2. Some get to 3, but level 4 is a very special place. So let's take a look at this a little more. If you want to bring about change, if you want to be truly successful and have this presence moment, you've got to be open-minded, open-hearted, is that a word, hearted? That works, right? And open-willed. Open mind, open heart, open will. If you get those things, you can respond effectively to change. You will find your blind spot and you will move beyond it. So he has this illustration. All right, you want to be in the top right portion of this arrow. And there are 4 levels of responding to change. The first one is you react. Quick fix. Anyone ever read Danna from Mars? Yeah, I had to read that. My wife and I read that. And she said, don't be Mr. Fixing. Don't be Mr. Fix. So, right, you just want to fix. I got it. We're all set. Reacting often is just about a quick fix. Let's put a Band-Aid over it. Let's put a little tape on it. Duct tape works really well, and then we're done. And so we have manifest action. The second one is we'll just make a new policy. You know, better yet, we'll buy the policy from Erie Boats. They have some really good policies, and then if they worry about writing the stupid policies, we'll just buy theirs and then we'll implement it. That'll solve everything. So we redesign. All right? Process structure. The third one is we think differently. We do a little Covey stuff. What do we really value? What do we really believe? And does all this fit those values and beliefs? And if you get to that point, you're going to get to a point of what's called regeneration, where you're now willing to commit energy, time, whatever it takes to get on that right side. You've gone through it all, and you are at a great place. So we go from the first one, which is what we observe, we observe, we observe. You gather data. What's the story here? What's happening? What's the attendance looking like? What are our assessments telling us? Are the assessments good? Do they align with the standards? Are they appropriately rigorous? Do these curricula tie into what the students have as their life experiences? In other words, is it relevant? Is it rigorous? We look at all sorts of data, disciplinary data. We observe, we observe, we observe. We get a really good, clear picture of what's happening. And then we retreat and we think and we reflect. Now you can't do that with a smartphone on, laptop. These are places where you have to literally seclude yourself. Go to Minnowbrook, go to Rensselaerville, go somewhere where it's quiet, where you can't get cell phone reception, and start to think, what does this all mean? This is a multi-day process. This isn't something that gets done in a faculty meeting or during a superintendent's conference day. This is something that takes a little more time and commitment. But in that process, you start to find your inner knowing. And it's a beautiful thing, especially when you do it in smaller groups, small mixed groups, so then you can share that really neat stuff. And then when you figure it out, you act. You don't wait. I work for SUNY. And I'm finding that in SUNY we have to wait for a lot of things. Sorry, Ruth, Amanda, that's not even you. It's about the system. Sometimes when a system gets so big, it becomes too big, right? And sometimes I think our institutions are a little too big, which is the beauty of our little branch campus. We're small, we can act quickly. But we want to act in an instant. So another way to look at it is to think of things as you have an open mind, which means you take that voice of judgment, oh my God, you know, this is the way you need to do it. All right, this is the right assessment tool. You know, Ames Web works, trust me, I've done it for many years. This is how you want to do it. Okay, Star Math, that's the only program out there. All the others just take it. All right, so you're judging. And then you got to change that voice of cynicism. Oh boy. We're going to spend $30,000 on that crap. You know what I mean? Why are we doing these teacher leader positions? We can barely balance. This is a waste of money. You got to open your heart. And then you've got to be open-willed. You got to say, you know what? I'm scared of this. The voice of fear, I don't know if this is going to succeed. What do I do if? So it requires an open mind, an open heart, and being open-willed. See things with fresh eyes. Sense, and then connect to the source. Let go. Let go of the fears. Know what you're doing is right. Find other people who support you and believe in you. And you are going to get the change that you're looking for. Okay? There's more to this than I want to get into now with 5 minutes to remain, but it's another nice model. But there's some similarities, all right, in all the models. And so I'm just going to close by asking you to think about where you are in your school system. As a teacher, as a school administrator, as a district administrator, as a higher ed official, what change do you need to have take place in your workplace? And then what is a model, or what models do you think would best serve your efforts? And then find some friends, some faculty, some colleagues, and see what you can do. Because when I started, you know, it gets back to something so logical. Help me help you. There's nothing complicated here. We have teachers who are leaders, not formally recognized in some places, but we know who they are. Let's do something a little more formal so that we can empower them to make a bigger difference in the schools that they work in. Because ultimately, we need to graduate students that are ready to contribute to a democratic way of life. There are a lot of challenges that lie ahead, and we want our students to be able to be successful in those challenges. And it's going to come through teacher leadership. This model of one person running a building just doesn't work. So think about the changes you need. Think about what model might work, or what models might work, and then think about that as you go through the rest of the day, which we have some really good sessions coming up. And with that said, I think I'm done, and then I have a little FYI stuff.